Welcome and thank you for joining us at this very special panel discussion in honor of Asian, American, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May. My name is Paul Grondahl. I'm the director of the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. It's a great privilege to be here as a moderator. I first want to introduce Samuel Caldwell. He's the Interim Diversity Officer and Assistant Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion at UAlbany, and he'll talk about this very special group of students and our Racial Justice Committee. Sam?
Thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate that. I'm Sam Caldwell, Interim Chief Diversity Officer here at the University at Albany. We are doing work that includes a committee for racial justice, which really looks at some of the things that have framed the bias and discrimination that we see manifesting in present day as we see the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion begin to transition to racial justice and social justice work. And one of the benefits of being able to do this work is not only to work with faculty and staff members who are able to bring a vast amount of lived experiences to the work, but also to be able to work with outstanding scholars. So we're joined today by a number of scholars, some undergraduate, some graduate scholars, and in one case, doctoral study, who are doing outstanding work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. In support of marginalized groups, they're working to increase awareness around intersectional identities. They're helping to strategize and frame and implement and support educational content and programming toward helping the greater University at Albany community to realize greater equity, and just as importantly, more inclusivity and a stronger sense of belonging within the community. So it's my great pleasure to be here today. I applaud these students for the work that they're doing, and I'm looking so very much forward to this conversation this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our panelists today. Kaori Otera Chen is the graduate assistant of the New York State Writers Institute. Proud to call her a colleague and part of our team. Born in Tokyo, Japan, Kaori moved to the United States in 2010. She is a PhD candidate in anthropology at UAlbany and is conducting her ethnographic research with local weavers. Welcome, Kaori.
Thank you.
Kristhiane Daquial is a rising senior at UAlbany, studying political science and philosophy with interests in bioethics, law, and philosophy. He is a migrant from Tuguegarao City, Cagayan, Philippines. In his homeland, Ivan graduated from San Jacinto Seminary and moved to the United States in 2016. Ivan was trained and inspired by Filipinx organizers in Jackson Heights in Queens. At UAlbany, he co-founded the Association of Southeast Asian Students and served as its first president. He hopes to complete a dual JD PhD program in Asian international law and global development. Welcome, Ivan. Ting Liu is a second-year PhD student in sociology at UAlbany, with research interests in migration and immigration, globalization, comparative studies, family, gender, and youth culture. Her current research projects are temporary workers in Australia, the impact of COVID-19 on international students in the US, and Chinese global capital in Los Angeles. Welcome, Ting. Zifan Luo is a PhD candidate in sociology at UAlbany. She was born in China and arrived in the United States in 2011. Her research interests include political discourse, hegemony, and social media. Welcome, Zifan. JC Yang is a first-year undergraduate psychology major at UAlbany. She's interested in studying neurodevelopmental disorders, as well as substance abuse disorders. In high school, JC was the vice president of the Chinese Student Association. And as a leader of that group, JC was inspired to become more active in voicing the issues that Asians face and working towards resolving those issues. At UAlbany, JC works at the Multicultural Resource Center and with the Racial Justice Committee in order to spread awareness and information about Asian culture that is often overlooked or downplayed. So these are our panelists today. We're so grateful that you're here. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kaori, to get the discussion going.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. I'm wondering if everyone feels comfortable to unmute. I mean, this is not like our weekly meeting. So, I mean, you can make any sound you wish and any time you want. Unless maybe you have some like background that you have to take care of, but I think it's okay to unmute and talk anytime. And first of all, thank you for all of you. Thank you all of you for taking the time to be here today. I think that I don't want to be like leader of this conversation. I see myself just a part of this group, and even though I mean I just initiated this, but doesn't mean that I'm leading anything. So please feel free to talk. And but to just get started, maybe since we are all student representative of the Racial Justice Committee at UAlbany, I'm wondering if maybe we can talk about why we wanted to join and what we want to accomplish. Well, I think I've been thinking about this question, but so it's kind of complicated, but when I learned about this committee, I was, well, to be honest, I was kind of curious who are the members of the committee and what kind of things are discussed. And since I see myself as a part of AAPI community, so I wish to be part of the committee. So how about everybody?
Well, I can start. As I said before, it's like the 10th year for me in the graduate school. And so in the very beginning of my decade in the United States, I was only focused on study, researching, get the degree as soon as possible. Because just adapting to the life in the United States, to the language, to the culture is already challenging enough. And I can imagine this is an experience shared by many students from Asia, from other countries to the United States. So, but only until the very recently that I realized, because previously I see myself as a foreigner in the United States. And when I file a tax return, I was like a residential or non-residential alien in the United States. I didn't see myself as an Asian, as a Chinese. I'm just a foreigner. But only until recently, I began to realize that when other people see me, they say not just a foreigner, they say an Asian people. This is kind of the way I was understood. I was assumed, I was stereotyped by other people, by many people in the United States. Now I feel like I need to make sense of how people make sense of me, of my identity, and what my identity in the United States mean to me, to myself, not only to other people. That's the reason why I want to join this committee. I want to speak from my perspective because I believe it is not an experience shared by many people on this community, on this committee. So this is kind of the beginning of my journey.
I think I can kind of relate to what Jifan just said. I think you and I moved to the US at similar time. I came here in 2010, and I just focused on kind of building new life here, and I never really I think I forced myself not to look back, but I just focus on things that like I have to do, and also like how I identify myself. Like I never really thought that I was an Asian before I moving to the US. And like you said, I am a foreigner, and I've been foreigner all the time I'm in the United States. So I think I can kind of understand what you say. Sorry, Ivan, I thought you're going to talk, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to share as well. So I moved here, I think 5 or 6 years ago, 2016, 5 years. Yeah, no. So I would, because of how I talk and how I act, people would assume that I grew up here, and they have certain assumptions with that. So an example, I would come into a person looking for advising, and they would say, yeah, just take this test, take this test, take this test. And I'll be like, is there accommodations? Because I mean, I don't speak I don't take tests in English that well because I speak it good, because I've been forced to sound like this. And that sort of experience really, from early on, 2016, it's like the spike of social justice work in America. When I first moved here, I really looked for stuff that I can sort of put my own identity in the space. And that's what I've tried when I moved to UAlbany, starting Association of Southeast Asian Students, and acting as their representative in said committee, because I feel as if Southeast Asians and queer Southeast Asians are not necessarily included in a lot of spaces regarding social justice work. So my goal is really to come in and sort of push in this lens of intersectionality to make sure that we're not taking assumptions of a huge group of people that are most definitely diverse and most definitely have diverse experiences, and be forced to sort of comply with the Asian bubble that they give us. So yeah, that's sort of why I decided to join the committee.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. Thanks, Kristhiane and Kaori. I think I share some similarities with you guys, but also have differences because I just came here since August 2019. So for me, I totally still consider myself as a full foreigner. The reason I joined this committee because of two reasons, I think. The first one is my own personal identity. The second one is I know this community during March after the Atlanta shooting crime, because my professor, Professor Luz Coco Karen, she invited me because she knows since last spring, I have been working on a project about the impact of COVID-19 on Asian international students. So I interviewed a lot of people. So I hope my research can make a contribution to this programming job. In terms of my own identity, I think before I came here, I was too idealistic, and my goal is very simple, because I just want to pursue my PhD degree and equip myself with the ability to do research, right? However, when I live here for 2 years, when I interact more with this country and the people and my surrounding community, I realize the reality is more complicated than I can expect. So you must admit you experience some difficulties, but you don't have the resources, or you don't acquire the suitable language to even express yourself, to communicate with people. So sometimes to defend yourself, So I suddenly realized there are a lot of things I need to relearn. So like in this AAPI community is so diverse, like different identities. The international students is very different from Asian American. So I really want to bring my own voice and also my participants' voice to increase the quality of our programming. Yeah, that's my goal to join here.
I just want to say thank you all so much for sharing those stories. I have a bit of a different experience. I was actually born here. I did have the advantage of being able to speak English growing up and all that. But I guess the thing that I want to say is that like anti-Asian hate, it's been a thing since before I was born, like before my dad came here from Singapore, like all of that. And it's actually a big reason why I was remote this year. Part of that was like sort of this fear of going into a new environment and possibly dealing with that kind of hate. So I guess what made me join the Racial Justice Committee during my first year was because a few months ago, I guess like throughout like since COVID started, there has been like a huge like increase in that anti-Asian hate. But especially following the tragic shooting at the Gold Spa in Atlanta, there were a lot of rallies taking place in support of AAPI. And being a remote student, I was unable to join a lot of these protests on campus and a lot of actual things that were being done in person to combat this. So I was trying to like actively look for other ways to get involved, not just in this short term, but also just long term, improving things for our community. So I was actually invited to join this committee by Professor Angie Chung, who teaches sociology at Albany. And I guess one of the main issues I've been seeing that I wanted to address through this committee, especially more recently, is sort of lack of solidarity. And when I say that, I mean both between different racial groups and within racial groups as well, like people infighting and all that. And I believe we can't exactly move forward if we're all fighting one another and trying to tear each other down. So perhaps the biggest goal I would like to achieve with the Racial Justice Committee is working towards solidarity and coalition building so that marginalized groups can all come together and actually bring about meaningful change. So thank you guys.
Paul, you want to say something?
Yes, I mean, I'm learning a lot. I'm really impressed by the responses, and I'm learning from your experiences. I'm interested in what you said, particularly, JC. Certainly, there's many historical incidents of hatred and discrimination against AAPI community. But what was your sense of the impact of the pandemic? To me, that's we had a former president that incited it, and did you feel like this really created a worse climate than stories you may have heard from your parents or grandparents and things? And if so, how can we start to combat that and reverse it? I just saw statistics in March, and the incidents of hate are not going in the right direction. Unfortunately, they're still rising. So what do you know from learning your own family's story, and what is it about this past year that in particular has caused it to spike?
So I guess the thing is, I don't know exactly if I can objectively say that things have gotten better or worse or anything like that. I mean, my dad told me a lot of stories about discrimination he faced growing up as an Asian immigrant, discrimination that his family faced. Same with my mom as well. I mean, she grew up in Chinatown with a predominantly Asian population, but still there were like incidents. I guess, for a while, things seemed to be kind of okay, but the anti-Asian sentiment was still like there. You would still get these like little microaggressions against you. Like I was called a chink in middle school, like before I even knew what that word meant. And it's so the thing is about the spike more recently, I think definitely part of what contributed to that was the rhetoric used by our former president, the China virus. But there were a lot of hate crimes that were happening far before that even happened as well. I remember before school shut down, there were times when I would be leaving the gym with my friend, and there would be kids, like actual kids, who would come up to us and be like, "Ah, coronavirus," and it started with this very like that's not even a microaggression. That's more like, just outright like, "Oh, coronavirus," um and then like it just started to like escalate more and more into these really absolutely horrible violent hate crimes, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better, even though the conversation around that has unfortunately kind of slowed down. Like I haven't seen many people talk about it much anymore, but I guess the way I see it in terms of I guess moving forward and help, like actually bringing about change in our community and helping people realize that this, like I feel like a lot of people are mostly blaming coronavirus on us, a lot of other things as well, and that goes for like all Asians as well. Like I feel like everyone just thinks all Asians are Chinese, and it's not fair. We're a very diverse population, and to sort of pigeonhole us into this one little category, it's not okay at all. And I think so. I guess to sort of start to break that whole like this whole anti-Asian sentiment is to make people more aware of the diversity of our culture, just our like different traditions, like our different like aspects of who we are. And also breaking things such as the male minority stereotype. A lot of people still believe that to this day, and constantly use us in like use that to argue against certain points, things like affirmative action and all that. And it really just puts us in a bad place where we're like people don't think we're enough of a minority to be suffering at all, but at the same time we're never going to be like this super like privileged group. So I guess just educating people as much as possible, and not even only just with Asian culture, things like even just educating people about COVID itself, because I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, this person's Asian, they must have COVID. And it's like, it should be a pretty like common sense thing, but I think some people just subconsciously think, oh, well, it came from China, so every Asian must be having COVID and spreading it. And it's like, it's just not really okay. So I think just having that a better understanding of things in general, both with Asian culture and just things relating to us and what's affecting us, I think that's how we can sort of move forward and help people understand better who we are, and that we're not just this monolith.
So if I can jump in. Yeah, so in a historical sense, hate for Filipinos, I guess, in American setting, started when Filipinos were taken to Los Angeles and dropped off, and they were made to work in the plantations there and there was stops in Hawaii to work in pineapple plantations. And more recently in 1900s, there were zoos in Coney Island featuring Filipinos, forcing them to eat dogs, and really pushing this ideology of jungle Asian vision of Filipinos. But really, so how I see it is this whole symptom that a whole systemic problem is never really gonna go away unless we take steps to protect our own communities where we are. And really, I was looking through resources, an example in Jackson Heights, wherein you can walk with the Lola or a grandma to bring them to a grocery store and back and stuff like that. But I was thinking about it. Yes, we have these things, but the people that will have to do this are also not going to be safe because they're also Asian. So that whole thing is just really weird. And coming from a university student, I really felt, very like I felt as if we were insulated from what's going on, and we really didn't have a sense of what was happening until that, the Western media showed us like, oh, this is what's happening, and this is what's going on. But the Western media also showed it in a way that, pits us against other racial groups, because when do they show the videos of Asian people dying? When the killer are Black or brown people. And that's the only time where they actually show videos. So it's really a matter of, as Josie said before, really coalescing a group of people and fighting towards not only education, but actually looking after our communities and being there to give, the basic supports that we need in a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I agree with everything just Jesse and Yvonne just said, and I want to add a little bit like the current affairs, because I'm now living in Toronto in Canada, and in the last month, when people protest against anti-Asian hate in Toronto, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, he said the current anti-Asian hate is partly to be blamed on China's growing aggression in the world. I find that frame, that narrative very problematic, because firstly, the anti-Asian hate not just started with China became a great power in the world. And secondly, if we blame it all on China, it means we cannot tell the difference between normal people, ordinary people, and what the Chinese government did. As Jesse just mentioned and Yvonne just mentioned, the Asian people, they are like a huge, diverse population. Even within the Chinese people, they have different political opinions, they have different views of the government, and fundamentally, they are individuals, they are people. So if we begin to make that kind of argument, anti-Asian hate is partly to be blamed on what China is today, what China means to the Western order in the world, then we are making this huge mistake of mixing like the government and people. Not to mention, even I, as a Chinese, I can't necessarily tell the difference between people from Japan and people from China just by looking at that people. Which means if we begin to make that assumption, we will blame it on everybody who looks like an Asian, which is a huge problem.
May I add something? Because I realize our other three panelists bring a lot of very important points, but I want to make contribution from my research. The first one respond to Jesse's comments about the diversity of this community. Our participants come from a lot of community like Chinese, Korean, and Japanese. So there is one Korean female student. Her insights is very interesting but very important. She shared when she was working in the downtown area of the Albany. She was yelled by a man like, "You are Chinese whore." And she responded like, "I can be a whore, but I'm not Chinese." So I find this common response is very important because this is so diverse of the community. But if we cannot deal with the problem appropriately, there will be a lot of division of this community. This is some danger. I think we should aware, and we will influence our work. This is the first thing. The second thing is in terms of Zhifan's comments on a situation in Canada. To be honest, a lot of my participants respond that they don't think the race framework can help, explain a lot of their experiences. To be honest, a lot of participants, they don't think what they experience is racism. Because you know why? Because for foreign students or scholars, they firstly perceive them as a transnational actor. So their interpretation of like discrimination, the quote discrimination, the discourse in the United States, they perceive in a different way. some of my participants prefer to connect with their country's relationship with this. A lot of scholars already did research about this, like Korean immigrants perceive their experience based on their ideas of Koreans' Koreans' position in the global world system. So I think a part of the reason why some Chinese students think they don't have the ability to respond, first of all, they consider them as totally foreigner. They said, I don't have citizenship, so I don't have rights. So they use the word rights. Secondly, even before the pandemic, we already know Chinese stereotype in Western countries. So they kind of acquired this thing before they came to the country. So when they came here, they experienced something, they think, oh, I already have the expectation, because from Western country perspective, people think Chinese people are like this way. So I just want to point out the reality. I don't want to say any disagreement, but this is a reality. These students, especially in our school, we have a lot of Asian international students. If they still perceive like this way, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the approach to find the suitable community to help them, they will still in this status. That's something I think we should think seriously.
Yeah, if I can jump in real quick. So in terms of like the Chinese stereotypes, and I had this rude awakening of this whole thing going on when my parents sort of told me, you got your mom's eyes, because my mom is Chinese, and they said you shouldn't go to the city anymore because it's not safe. And that goes into anyone. It can be anyone. It can be a Hispanic person looking more, when look with Chinese, I guess, features, like whatever that means. That can be a target of this hate or of this systemic issues that Asians in general face, people with Chinese features face, and people of color in general face. So it goes into different layers, and that's really, really just that moment when I heard that was really my last straw, sort of like, yeah, this is real, because I didn't have a sense of what's going on until then. And yeah, I just wanted to share that as well.
Yeah, I think unfortunately there have also been, I did see a news report of a Mexican woman who was attacked, and people were, the person who attacked her like basically was calling her anti-Asian slurs and things like that. It's really, really unfortunate. So like that happens to anyone, and also just people who have like Chinese features or Asian features, like and just going back to Ting Ting's point about some people not realizing that they're even facing discrimination. I think it's also the fact that a lot of times when we try to speak up about these things, people tell us like, oh, what you're going through isn't that bad. Or like, not, maybe they don't say it directly, but they'll sort of say like, oh, like, do Asians really go through like things like that, So it's like, I feel like kind of like what Ivan was saying before, it's like we kind of really only have ourselves to like protect each other, which is really unfortunate, because I think what we want is also just for people to care about us. It's not even like we want people to like fully just be like fighting with us and understanding every single part of like who we are in our culture, but it's just like just care about us and like validate our struggle. I think like that's like just the bare minimum.
I agree. I mean, I think that the people in general really can't understand other people's experiences. I mean, this is very hard. I don't think if I just remained in Japan, I mean, the last 10 years, the things that I've learned or things that I've like deeply thought about, I would never thought about it if I just remained in Japan. But because of my experience moving to a different country, learning new language, and just like learning language, like I've met so many people telling me like how difficult for them to like take French class, for example. in their high school, middle school as an American, or how struggle they experienced when they went to, I don't know, like Spain, for example. But actually, I know Tintin and Jifan really, and Ivan, of course, I mean, understand this, but learning new language in a like place that you have to live for like longer period. It's not just that you are a tourist anymore. You have to have your new life. Is completely different than taking, I don't know, like Spanish in high school, for example. But I think it's just if you never experience, it's hard to understand. And this probably goes to all the experiences that we had as a, I don't know, like Asian or whatever people identify as something. But this one, probably it's hard to understand other people, but therefore I think what we are doing now is very important. And when people watch this, and hopefully somewhat they build more empathy, or, you know, that's kind of hoping for.
No, I think you're right, and Kaori for organizing this wonderful. Sam, did you have a question you wanted to pose to the panel?
Thank you very much, Paul. So the work of the Racial Justice Committee, we have two co-chairs, Dr. Karen Luscoco, Dr. Joyce Wood Parker. I was just curious, based on your experience with the committee, was there anything that you took away that may have been a surprise, or something that you might have expected or maybe didn't expect, but you took away as perhaps a positive experience or a positive thought or takeaway from your experience on the committee? And if so, what might that be?
Oh, sorry, Evan. Okay. Yeah, to save some time. Yeah, I can do first. I think there are some surprises for me. As I point out, after I came here, there is a learning process. I became more hesitant than before to express myself. But this meeting, to be honest, is the first meeting after I came here. I really want to participate, try my best to participate. It's because I think the first of all, I see the background of the people. I see they are very diverse, and a lot of people coming from different backgrounds, but they are still working together. And the way we communicate with each other, I think give other people space. And also the respectable, because I used to study social worker. So like kind of the meeting organized in a very group, social worker group work way. So that give people like me trust of each other. You can express myself. And also the work efficiency is great. So I make me realize this community does do a lot of job, especially you include not only faculty, but also different levels of students. Reminded me about March, I participated the rally. That's my first time to know, oh, in this city, in this community, there are a lot of organizations. So I didn't know that before. So for me, I'm part of this university. So this is my first chance to work with so many people from so diverse background. So I appreciate this very much.
Yeah, I can go next. So I initially had mistrust of committees in general in the university. Because I have been in student association, and I actually quit during COVID. And there have been a lot of committees formed, disbanded, but there's no clear next steps. And joining those committees was sort of like, I don't know what it's for really. Like, I don't see the message in a lot of those committees because it's not really clear. But for this one, I received an email. It was very comprehensive, and I actually took a screenshot of it and sent it to a friend, Amy Zhang. And I told her, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, do you know who's working on this? And then she sort of sent me to the committee. And since then, the few meetings that I've been to, there has just been a level of respect and validation for the things that I do have to share and want to share. And I have been able to learn a lot of things about, you know, what's going on in America as a whole, for other Asian Americans, for other Asians, and for other New Yorkers, I guess, because, you know, the levels of conversations we have span from, you know, as students, and then as Americans, as Asians, and then as, you know, people here. And that, I think, is very, very awesome. So I'm very thankful for being a part of this committee.
Yeah, thank you. And I similar to you, Ivan, I think well, this is my again, my first year here, so I'm not too familiar with the committees that have been formed on campus, but I think this is, I'm not sure if this really came as a surprise to me, but I think the that this is probably like the only really committee that I've been a part of that was like super diverse and also just willing to like listen to me, because a lot of times in the past I've realized that I've been a part of primarily Asian groups advocating for ourselves, and it was almost like yelling into an echo chamber, because it's like if we ever tried to talk to anyone that like wasn't Asian, they'd be like, what, like they either wouldn't give us the time or like listen to us, or they just would be like, oh, you know, whatever. So I guess this committee is definitely, I definitely really appreciate being a part of this committee, because I don't think that I really had the chance to speak to a group of people that was willing to like validate my ideas and feelings about everything, and also just bring in their perspectives as well. So that's something I definitely value a lot.
And I also want to emphasize how friendly and how open-minded the environment is in the committee, because it is not easy to talk about race at this moment. So before joining the committee, I do have my personal concerns, like talking about racism and Asian and race at the current moment. But after joining this committee, organizers like Sam, like Paul, and other organizers on the committee were very successful creating this environment to talk about race with open mind and with just a kindness towards each other, to accept new ideas, to talk about new ideas. This made me feel very comfortable being in this community and probably sharing my experience and my ideas in the community, on the committee. So I feel like if we can use that skills to promote the discussions about race, to involve people in genuine discussion about race and racism in the United States, it would be a great help to the current whatever's going on in the outside world.
I think I don't have any disagreement with what you all have just said, but even though I still think that we need more voices. I mean, even though our committee is very diverse, but still we are missing lots of voices that, I mean, sometimes people say that it's kind of Asian culture that we are quiet, but I may disagree. I mean, we are not actually quiet. We are always talking, but it's perhaps your problem that you don't really like hear our voices. And I think people like me, or I mean, I don't need to talk about you, but people like me are lucky that I can be on this committee. But I'm sure that even on our campus, which is just a tiny part of the Albany area or entire New York State or United States or in the world, there are a lot of people probably we need to like learn how to listen to. And so I wish that our committee will like invite more people and different culture then we can learn more from each other.
Thank you, Kaori. So I know we're coming up close to the end of our time. This has been really helpful. I think in terms of empathy and awareness, I feel like you've allowed me to walk in your shoes for the past hour, and I feel I appreciate your honesty, your insight. I would like to end on one practical question, since we're all going to be, you've earned a relaxing, hopefully a break over the summer a little bit, but we'll come back in the fall. We don't want to lose momentum. What is one practical thing you would suggest that we could, do better? We hope you feel safe and valued and respected and nurtured on our campus as part of the AAPI community. That's kind of the basic, but how can we advance this and do better? I don't know if rallies or wearing t-shirts or bringing in speakers and things, but I'd like to hear just one thought or idea that we can hold on to and try to put forward and when we come all back together in the fall.
Yeah, if I can begin, just to save time, sorry. I really think that coming up with a comprehensive priority list would be really, really awesome coming from this committee and handing it into university administration, which, hopefully includes diversifying our faculty, because we can have a diversified student body, but if the faculty are not diverse, then what is it really for? So other than that, really, sort of taking strategies to finding out where we can expand the East Asian Studies department to become the Asian Studies department, and really including a lot more of programming that will help with cultural competency. I know you said one, but I had a few, sorry.
Yeah, I have two, perhaps. The first one is because international students, I know August 2019, we have the very big ceremony, the orientation week, right? So I really want to say our community's programming could be the possibility that we add one section in the orientation week to present some of our programming in our community. This is my first suggestion. The second one is I don't know if it's possible, but if it is possible, could we suggest different departments, professors to add something in their syllabus, or just to raise their awareness to their readings, or when they approach the course using a more diverse way to bring in this issue or consider these possible problems in their course.
Thank you. And I also want to add, I think around a month ago, I got an invitation from Samuel to come to the campus for this guest chef event. It was really great, by the way. Thank you so much again for that. And so I did get to, while I was there, I did stay for some time after that. I got to meet some people that I had met virtually, and they were asking me if I do anything that while I'm remote that's related to Albany and the campus. And I mentioned to them that I worked with the Multicultural Resource Center and the Racial Justice Committee, and they were like, "What's that?" And I was like, wow, you've never heard of that. So I guess going forward, that something that we could really work on is really making people aware that these things exist, because we do have these resources. And I think a lot of people just don't know that there are things going on and resources for them, especially for students and faculty that are of AAPI identity, or just any minority group. I think they just need to be aware that we have these resources available for them, and we're working on just promoting things more how we're working on bystander intervention training. I think that's really important, and that's something that people definitely need to be aware of, that exists or is going to exist. So I think, yeah, just overall making sure that people know that there are resources available for them, and that and also just working on adding as many as possible, and making sure that the space in Albany's community is just like safe and good for everyone.
I probably won't be in Albany after this summer because, sorry, 10 years in a program is long enough and it's time for me to move on. But I do think like if we may use the promote the environment, the skills we developed in this committee to facilitate discussions about race with kindness, with empathy towards other racial groups, and make it much easier, much comfortable, and much open-minded to talk about race, not just on this community, but also like at UAlbany. How can we make our program to promote that kind of skill set to teach people how to comfortably talk about your own race experience and how to listen, how to respond when other people begin to talk about their race experience. Because I used to teach an undergraduate class, Introduction to Sociology, and we do have a lecture on race relationship. And I do find many white students in that class feel kind of uncomfortable because they assume they are like the targets in that particular lecture, and which they don't want to be a part of it. They feel like race it's not my business. Why am I sitting here? I'm not a racist. I never like discriminate any people from the minority groups. So I feel like still people, wherever you come from, even you are a foreigner or you were born in the United States, we still need to talk about race because it is how our identity was constructed in this country. So I feel like the skill set of how to talk about race is very, very important. And we may think about how we can promote that kind of skill set.
I agree. Ivan, you've been at UAlbany for 3 years, right? So have you ever had any professors who are from Philippines?
Not one.
So, I mean, I guess I'm interested in what you have just expressed. I mean, we really need to have a more diverse faculty. I mean, I know that I've been a UAlbany student for, I don't know, since 2012. And I know university has been working hard on this, but it's never been enough. And even like, I mean, for example, like indigenous community, we just change the name like Indian to indigenous quad, but I don't think changing name is not enough at all. We need to hire indigenous faculty, and the same goes to like faculty from Philippines and many other countries. And I wish that UAlbany will become the leader of this like initiative in the country. So that's something that I want to see, and maybe we can do. I don't think this is impossible.
Thank you, Kaori. I want to remind everyone that this is being recorded. It will be shared widely. It's a really valuable, important first step on the wonderful work of the Racial Justice Committee. I want to thank Kaori for organizing, Sam for leading the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and Ting Ting, JC, Ivan, and Jafan for sharing and really helping illuminate and bring awareness to this issue. We're really proud and honored to have you at the University at Albany, and I want to thank everyone. Thank you.